Erev Tov, everyone. It is Tuesday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States, here in the diaspora. This is the Maimon Beit Knesset, and therefore it must be the Rabbis Discuss, whatever it is we decide that we're going to discuss. And tonight we're going to be discussing, well, as I put in the teaser, copycats is the subject for tonight. So, without further ado, let me bring in Rabbi Ancel, and I'll turn up his volume for him. There you go.
Shalom, everybody. Good evening. Tonight should be interesting because copycats, plagiarism is about what we're going to be discussing.
So, before we get into that, let's see who we got in the chat room. We have Donald, we have Yair, Marilyn, and Marshall, and Richard, and a number of people watching in the background. So, who obviously can't get in on the chat because they're watching on their phone or on their tablet or whatever. Anyway, I'm glad to have everybody here this evening. So, as usual, I will pose the question first, and we'll give people a chance in the chat room to actually answer, give their opinion on it, and then we will actually go into what the din had to say about this. So let's start out with a question, which is, I am a seamstress. In order to save the cost of paying someone to design clothing and to avoid the risk that the design will not be successful, I visit popular women's clothing stores in Geula and photograph these items that are popular and then sew and sell the identical items. My husband recently told me that perhaps what I am doing is improper. Must I cease my practice? So, there you go, Marilyn. Now you know what it's all about. Okay, so while we're waiting for people to put in their comments in the chat room, anything interesting going on in the Dominican?
Right now, the weather is beautiful, but I read a lot about the COVID going on in the United States and Canada and all over the world. Here, people watch themselves. People listen. So we really have no problems here.
So what do you mean by they watch themselves and they listen?
When I go shopping, I go into a store, I have to have a face mask, and they ask me for my certificate of vaccination. If I don't have a certificate of vaccinations, they will say, please, go home. If you don't have a mask, they will say, please, go home. Simple.
Okay, let's see. Okay, Marilyn says she just cannot call it an original. Okay, so that's what Marilyn has to say about it. So that's about only comment we have in there so far. And
Aryel,
Donald, you got you don't have an opinion on this? Come on.
Who, me?
No, I'm talking to the people in the chat room. Donald and Yair and Marshall and Richard. On. Venture an opinion. Take a chance.
Well, here's my question. If this lady sees a dress that she likes and people buy it, but since she is a manufacturer and she does change it Is there anything wrong with that?
If she changes the design,
If she changes the design slightly,
yeah.
uh, it, she is, in a way, she is copying the dress, but when it comes out that it's not the same dress, is there a
Okay.
problem?
Okay, so Year says it can be classed as stealing. Okay. Um, all A-line skirts are the same. For example, this is from Maryland. Yeah, I mean that's a kind of a set design that there's nothing really unique about it other than originally, but no, I think this woman is talking about is that she's actually going to a place that has popular clothing where they've spent money to have it designed and stuff, or they bought the design.
Yeah.
It's too bad. Too bad Regina isn't in here because she was actually a buyer.
Okay,
Uh,
but here's the other question. Does that manufacturer say, does that's exclusive rights and you cannot copy it or change it?
well, typically you end up getting sued if you do that.
If you can get sued if it's exactly the same.
Well, no, you can get sued if it's substantially similar. We went through the whole thing with the what was it, MC Hammer and what was his name, where he got sued because of the song that he wrote. There's been a number of cases, especially with songs, where they use the same kind of a beat and stuff like that, where they've gone after another artist for it. And
So let me
Maryland
ask you.
says knockoffs are sold all over are sold all the time. Yeah, they are. The question
But yeah,
is
but you
it?
see, the knockoffs are probably, and I'm just guessing, probably 90% the same style. But what about if the item 50% different than the original or 60%? How do you measure where a point comes where you say, yeah, you can be sued? Because
Yeah.
knockoffs are the same,
Well,
you know.
a knockoff is basically typically a knockoff will be like, a Gucci or something like that. Gucci has a very distinctive logoing and stuff like that, where they'll
Sure.
actually replicate the Gucci logo and stuff like that and sell it as the original.
Yeah, okay. If the logo is the same, but what happens if I have a different logo, but but it looks the same, but it doesn't say Gucci?
Mm-hmm.
Can you be sued for that?
I guess it depends to the extent on what the what
That's
the,
what I am asking. Is 50% suable? Is 60% suable? Where is the limit?
well
Where
they're
is the law say, okay, you can sue that person that copied your item? Because you can see cars that they're almost the same, but they're not the same. They use almost the same headlights. They change them slightly.
mm-hmm.
The body is almost the same, but the curvature is a little bit different. But they're still copied.
Yeah.
Okay, let's read. Let's see what the Torah says.
Let's find out what the din has to say about this.
So your question involves two issues. that we previously discussed briefly in different contexts. See the articles from Parsha Shalach and Pinchas that are posted on our website, so on, so on, so on. Since what you are doing is an application of a very common issue that we will elaborate further, we will see that even if you were to buy the clothing and then copy it, your behavior would be problematic. All the more so since you don't even buy the clothing. Can you raise it at all?
You go back up here.
Okay. In order to understand the first issue, we must make an introductory remark. Under Torah law, there are various causes for requiring a person to pay money to someone else. There are the obvious reasons. If one steals or damages someone, he must pay back. He took something away from his victim. If one hires someone to work, he must pay the other party because he's obligated himself to do so. However, in Torah law, under certain circumstances, one must even pay for a benefit he or she derives from someone else. It is this issue that this article we will concentrate upon. An example is where one's animal eats someone else's food that was on public property. The Torah rules that the animal's owner is not liable for damages that his animals caused the owner of the food, since the food was in a public property. That I can see.
Mm-hmm.
However, of course, you're going to have somebody else, which the Gemara says that the animal's owner still must pay the owner of the food the value of the benefit that he derived from his animals having eaten the food. But that causes me a problem. Why did he, first of all, leave the food in public? Since anybody, whether human or animal, could have eaten it. So why is he liable?
Sure. Well, yeah. Again, we don't know what the circumstances are.
Okay.
I mean, we'd
So
have to go
this
to
usually is-
we'd have to go to Bava Kama 20b to find out.
Okay, so this usually is less than the full value of the food, since the food typically costs more than what he would have otherwise spent to feed his animal. The Gemara discusses whether one is liable if he derives benefit without causing any loss to the one from whom he benefited. The conclusion, so again, we don't have anything that says the conclusion is that one is generally not liable unless the owner suffered a loss. Yeah, I can understand he suffered a loss, but whose fault is it?
Well, let's take it for instance. I mean, if he was in the market, that's a public place, right?
Yes.
And if he's got his wares there so that he can stock his stall, and the ox comes along and starts eating it, then is it really his fault? He's just
No. That I can see that the owner of the ox is liable for the damages done.
Yeah, but if he just left it there in the public thoroughfare as if it was ownerless, then I mean, that's a different set of circumstances.
Correct. However, it is important to note that even when the person from whom he benefits suffered a loss, the payment is still for the benefit he derived and not for the loss he suffered. But this is going back to the same thing with the wine and everything else.
Right.
Because even if the loss is small, nevertheless, the one who benefits must pay for the entire benefit. For example, if someone squatted on vacant property, he is not liable if the owner did not suffer any loss. But do these people have the right to be there?
Mm-hmm.
However, if he dirtied the walls, if the property even slightly, he must pay for the entire benefit he derived from occupying the vacant property, i.e. rent, even when the cost to clean the walls is minimal. The Pnei Yehoshua explains that the logic is that, as we mentioned, one is obligated to pay for a benefit he derives from someone else. Of course, there's going to be, however, if the
Yeah.
one whom the benefit is derived does not suffer any loss whatsoever, the one who benefit does not have to pay, since it is midas sedom, to prevent someone else from deriving benefit when there is no loss. However, if there is a loss, since midas sedom is no longer affected, the one who benefits must pay in full the benefit that he gained.
Okay, so before we go on with that, okay, so we're talking about the rental, and you actually posed a question about, you know, the squatter. You know, can he legally be there? Okay, so let's say the building or the dwelling is abandoned. Nobody's been living there for a long time, and the place is essentially falling down, and the person decides to, is homeless, and he moves in there, and he hasn't caused any damage. And there's no, he the person, it's different. If you go into somebody's dwelling, and that person has the ability to actually rent it out and make money, and you're squatting in that to keep him from being able to rent it, then obviously you're deriving benefit at his cost.
I can see that.
Yeah, but if it's an abandoned piece of property and nobody's lived there, and there's if the thing is falling apart and the person's just in there to basically take shelter, then there's no damage.
For me, it would, if it was my building, for me, and the guy is homeless, for me, it would be a mitzvah to let him stay there.
Yeah.
You have to judge the situation, because, hey, it's an empty building, nobody's lived there. There's a guy who is homeless, and you're giving him a chance to have a roof over his, and he's not doing anything to the building. He's not damaging it. God forbid, it's a mitzvah to let him stay. Okay.
Yeah.
He cannot stay. You can tell him you cannot stay forever, but for me to give somebody like that a chance to live would be a mitzvah. I mean, it would be a sin for you to, as far as I'm concerned, for you to throw him out.
Well, now, if you were, at the point in time where, let's say the property gets sold, and the person who bought the property wants to come in and they want to rehab the home. You want to bring it back to its former glory. Okay?
Then you have to leave.
Yeah, they have to leave. They haven't caused any damage. The people who are coming in that are going to rehab it are basically going to damage it anyway, in the classical sense of damaging.
But here's another thing, and I don't know if that is true because I'm not really that familiar. What about squatter's law? I heard somewhere that if a squatter lives a certain amount of years in that building, you can't really throw him out.
Now that was a that was a law a long time ago. That's been
Okay.
there's a lot of qualifiers on that, and it varies from state to state too. So if somebody squats in my property, which I've had happen, somebody squats on my property, then I have to go through, and it takes about 120 days to get that person out of the building. Okay, in California, it can take up to 7 years to get a squatter out of a piece of property. Hence why squatters actually out in California, in certain areas in California, make a living doing that. They go in, they find a place, they go in and squat, hoping and knowing in most cases that the person who owns the property is going to pay them to leave because it's just going to take them forever to actually get them evicted from there.
That is a problem.
Yeah. Now, let's see. We got Simcha has joined us, and so has Lee. Lee, we have not seen you in a while. Okay. So we're caught up in the chat room, at least for the moment. Okay. Everybody seems to say that it's a form of theft. Okay. So let's go on.
Okay, in a controversial ruling.
Yeah, you skipped a whole paragraph there, buddy.
Oh, where am I?
The case of the squatter.
Okay, the case of the squatter is discussed in the Gemara, and it represents the classical case where one who benefits must pay for the benefit he derived because he causes a loss to the one from whom he benefits. It is very important to note that in this case, the benefit that the squatter derived came from the house that belonged to someone else, who we will call the victim. But I don't get that.
What do you mean?
If somebody lived there and he occupied part of that house, yeah, I can see. But if that building, there's nobody living.
No, hang on. No, we see this a lot. That a person will have a property in Israel and will live in the United States part of the time and live some of the time in Israel. And so there are certain times when that property is going to be vacant for a few months or a number of months, maybe half the year.
But then that person has no right to be there.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. That's intrusion. That is against the law.
Well, that's breaking and entering.
Yeah. But I don't see.
Now, we have studied this before. This summer, we actually talked about this when we were studying, and there was a discussion about the piece of property that is abandoned, and how long does that piece of property have to be abandoned before you can lay claim to it.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So there is in the law, what for abandoned property, or that there is a specific time, and I don't remember what it is. I think it was something like 5 years, wasn't it?
I thought it was 5 or 7.
Okay. I think for some reason I'm thinking 5, but you may be right. It may be 7. But for 5 years nobody's been there, nobody's taken care of it, nobody's been around or anything like that. Somebody moves into it, but there was qualifiers on that. That if they went in there and they lived there, they couldn't just live there and lay claim to the piece of property in 5 or 7 years. They actually had to improve the property. If they didn't make any improvement to the property, then they couldn't lay claim to it. And then there was a whole discussion about, if 2 or 3 years, and then the word gets back to the person who actually owns the property, And then that person comes back and lays claim to it and says, hey, this is my property, you have to leave, and so on and so forth. Okay.
But then I would say, oh, you've been here for 3 years, but you improved my property. I would say, since the owner is going to derive some benefit, then pay the squatters. Is that fair?
He would have to pay the squatter? No, absolutely not, because he didn't have permission to do that.
Correct.
And
So
he
no
came
matter
in.
what
He came into the property before the proper time had elapsed.
That is correct. So, if he came after, let's say, whatever it is, the 5 or the 7 years, the owner has no claim to it.
Right.
If the squatters did some sort of improvement to the land or to the house, then the owner has lost the property.
Loaners all lost. Well, he's lost the buildings. Let's put it that
He
way.
lost the building, yeah.
Yeah, he's lost the building. He doesn't lose the property because we don't own the property.
Correct.
Okay, that goes to whoever the tribe is, and so on and so forth. We could get into a whole discussion on that. But if he makes improvements, now, if he came in there, and let's say he comes in at 2 years, and he comes in and he makes improvements on the property, what he considers an improvement, the original or the person who actually owns it doesn't consider it an improvement, then
Yes.
and the time hasn't lapsed, and he comes back and lays his claim to the property, then that person has to pay for all the damages.
Yes.
So it's like I come in and I come into your property, and it's only been sitting there abandoned for maybe 2 or 3 years, and I come in and I decide I want to have an extra room on the house, and I tear out one of your walls and I build a room on there.
So you have to pay for the damages.
Yeah.
That I can see. But after the 7 years, what happens?
And he's lost his right to lay a claim to the property.
Correct.
He's basically, what they call in the law, slept on his rights.
Correct. So what are the people in the room saying?
They are saying, let's see, let's check it. Well, trespassing is the fastest way to meet a Shem in many parts of Texas. Okay, in Missouri, if you upkeep the property for 25 years, the squatter owns the property. That kind of makes sense. Let's see. Right improvement is required. Yeah. Made improvements the same as homesteaders. Okay.
But that's a long time, 20 years.
25. It's 20. Yeah, but I mean, it does make sense. If you say, okay, 25 years, you've been on this property for 25 years, you've made improvements on there, you've established yourself. Nobody has made a claim on this property, and it's better to have some.
I blame the owner of the property, because he didn't care enough, and that's a quarter of a century. He didn't care enough, so let him lose the property.
That's really interesting, because one of the things I love to do is I like to watch these urban explorers. What I mean by that?
Yeah.
These are the people that go in and they go to these abandoned properties and stuff like that, and they go around and they look. Now, there's only certain ones that I like. The ones that go in there and they don't mess things up, they don't take anything, they're just in there to kind of see the property, kind of get a feel for who lived there, maybe what happened and stuff like that. There's a couple like R&K All Day. I like him very much, because the only thing he ever messes with in a house is he has a thing about telephones. So if he sees on one of these old phones with the receiver off the hook, he'll always hang it up. I don't know what it is about that, but it's just one of those things of his. But he never takes anything from the property. He never does any damage. Explomo, which is a young man, about 22 years old in Europe. He goes all over Europe and looks at these properties and stuff like that. And I love watching his shows. But some of these properties they have been into have been abandoned. It could be anywhere, like maybe 3 or 5 years. Or some cases have been abandoned for over 100 years. And nobody has bothered to do anything with the property. They went into some castles that were just absolutely amazing, and everything was still there, and it's been abandoned for 50, 60, 70 years. So in the United States, it's okay, well, 25 years, but in Europe, it's significantly different because these properties can be abandoned and left abandoned for decades, and the owner will always have the right to come back.
Come to my town. There are 4 walls. In my town, there are 4 walls. If you want to fix them up and rebuild it and call it back what it was a few hundred years ago in the castle of Dracula.
Uh-huh. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Rabbi Ancel is originally from Romania.
Transylvania.
And he used, as a child, he used to play in Dracula's castle.
It's the strange thing about that region. I was 14 years old when I left that godforsaken communist country because I was a Jew. And landing in Paris from Romania, it's like coming out of the cave age. And my father had a friend that had moved before the Second World War. So we were invited for Friday night dinner. And to start, the lady put some glasses down and filled them with this liquid, and I tasted it and I put it down. And I said, "What is this?" And she said, "Water." I said, "I don't like it." It is the first time in 14 years that I tasted water. And she said, "Why?" Because my town, that area, was very volcanic. So when I went with my brother, may he rest in peace, we went to the fountain. Each street had a fountain. And we dropped the bucket and the water came up. It was fizzing because that water is the club soda we drink today. And that's all I drank. But if I went to my friend that was 2 or 3 streets down, the water was still like club soda, but it was yellow, and it was because it was sulfur, and that's the one I got hooked on, and it was delicious.
Marilyn says that my maternal grandparents are from Transylvania.
Fantastic. But Dr. Dan, that was the only doctor in our town, if we went to his fountain and we dropped the bucket, and when the bucket came up, it was blood because it was all iron.
Iron, yeah.
Yeah, this is where with Dracula and all this comes with the blood. But nothing unusual to see people in my town to be well over 100 years old because it was that water that was full of good stuff, vitamins and iron and sulfur. But yet, strangely enough, in the wintertime, and don't forget, Transylvania is in the Carpathian Mountains, and there's snow. We used to have snow, up to the windows in the house. But yet, we would go through a river, and we would make our way with sticks to the river, get stark naked and put our clothes on the snow and jump into the river. And the river was 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It was boiling hot. That's why I never saw fish, or because they couldn't live in there. And we used to stay in the river. It was nice and warm. So it
Yeah.
was kind of a
Kind
crazy
of,
time.
kind of like the snow monkeys in Japan, huh?
Yeah, and the only time in my town that we would see candies or chocolate. I remember the Wrigley's chewing gum because when we used to get a piece of the gum, we used to rip it in three pieces so we would have it for 3 days. Is when people from Canada, United States, from France, from Europe, they would come to visit the castle, and since they were wanting to give us money, but in communism you were not allowed to
Right.
own foreign currency. So you used to say, no, 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 no money, chocolate, candy. So that's what we used to, but the candy, chocolate, and this did not exist in my town. The first car for human driving is when we landed in Paris. I saw trucks, tanks from the communist Russia. They used to come in here, and the Russian trains, they used to steal all that Romania had. But cars, no cars, never saw. Horses,
Yeah.
wagons with sleighs, yes, but cars, no. Military trucks, plenty. Weird country, and you know something, things may have changed a little bit, but socialism and communism never died. And anybody in the United States, and I've seen it, and I read about it, anybody that believes that socialism and communism is good, please, I beg you, go to Venezuela and live for 6 months. You'll come back to the United States and go down on your knees and kiss the ground. Because the only way to really know what communism is to live it. I went back to Romania in 1989, 30 years later, and I was in Bucharest. When I got off the train, I jumped back on the train. The rats were bigger than cats. And I went to my friend and I looked at the store, and there was steaks 4 or 5 inches thick. I said, wow, things have improved. And he said, look closer. And then I looked, and there were steaks made out of wood, painted like a steak. I nearly passed out. I went into a store to buy bread, and the lady laughed at me because I told her that I was from Canada. And she looked at me. She said, sir, pick that piece of bread up. If you can break it over your knees, you can have it for free. I couldn't break it. It was made from the covers of the grain. It was like a rock.
Yeah.
So please, I love the United States Mises to pieces. But if anybody in the United States believes that communism is the answer, do me a favor. Go to Cuba. Cuba's maybe a little bit better now. Go to Venezuela.
No, it really isn't any better. Cuba really isn't any better.
But
They make it look
Venezuela,
there's certain
Venezuela is the garbage of the garbage. People are starving to death.
yeah.
And if you were a Jew in communism, oh man, I used to get beatings from the police because I'm a Jew. I got used to it. So no. So what's happening in the United States, and I'm not going to mention names or anything like that, although I voted for Trump, uh, forget about it. Socialism and this does not work. It never did work. The
Yeah.
only country that came close to socialism is Israel because of the kibbutz. Because in kibbutz, you live there, you
Right.
work, you get your food for free, you get your housing for free. So but that is different. Israel is different.
Yeah, it's a different. It's not really socialism.
It
It's
is.
kind of unique to Israel.
Yeah, because each kibbutz produces something and they
Right.
trade between themselves. So there's no money transaction. Each kibbutz has a store, where everybody from the kibbutz goes in and takes whatever he needs and walks out and doesn't have to pay. Because you work for it. So, in a way, because that's what socialism initially said, that everybody, you can go into a store and get what you need and you don't need any money. What socialism forgot is the human side of us. Because if you're going to go into a store, you need a pound of sugar, but on the shelf you only see 2 pounds. So the human mind says, well, there's only 2 pounds. What if I come back next week and there's no sugar? So I'm going to take 2 pounds. But that pound you took, the extra pound you took, was my pound. So it only works in theory, but because humans are the way they are, it does not work.
Okay, we are about at our halfway point, so I'm going to turn your volume down here, Ancel.
Okay.
And we're going to take our break. And when we come back, we're going to find out what the Noda Ben Yehuda has to say about this subject. And so stay tuned, and we will be back in 6.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. The show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. Okay, so we started out with the question. Let me repeat the question here. We started out this evening with this question about I am a seamstress. In order to save the cost of paying someone to design clothing and to avoid the risk that the design will not be successful, I visit popular women's clothing stores in Geula and photograph the items that are popular and then sew and sell the identical items. My husband recently told me that perhaps what I am doing is improper. Must I cease my practice? And that's where we were discussing this, and we kind of got a little sidetracked, which is fine because this is our show and we can talk about whatever we want to. That's why there's a big question mark at the end of the title. So let me bring Rabbi Ancel back on.
And I apologize. Communism, socialism is a very sore subject because I suffered for 14 years because of it. So I apologize that I drifted off the subject. So we can continue. It's probably if the people in the chat room want one day that we discuss about my life in the communist country, I would be glad to talk about it. I don't like it, but they say the truth hurts, but it's the truth.
Okay, so somebody put a question into the chat room. Leah said, what do you suppose the rabbis do in intermission? Well, some of us take the opportunity to visit the other room, and then we usually come back on, and we have the microphone off, so Rabbi Ancel and myself, we sit here and we talk until it's time to come back on. So now, if you're watching Zeta's Story Corner, what I do during the break on that one is because, when you're holding your hand in this position for a long period of time, it gets very sore and it gets numb. So I have to take a break at about a half an hour, and I have to go out and I have to do this kind of stuff to get the feeling back into my hand so I can do the rest of the show. Hence why we have a break on Zeta Story Corner. Even though Zeta Story Corner is only an hour long, I need that time to get my arm to actually work again. So, okay. So if you don't mind, I'm going to carry on with the reading.
Okay.
So,
it's a controversial ruling
Yeah.
of Noda Yehuda.
In a controversial ruling, the Noda ben Yehuda extended this principle further. He was asked to decide a dispute between a Rav who published a Gemara with Rashi and Tosafot and his own commentary, and the Rav's printer. The basis for the dispute was that the Rav had paid the printer for typesetting his sefer. However, the printer, instead of just dismantling the type, as was the common practice, used the type to publish the Gemara with Rashi and Tosafot, but without the Rav's commentary. The Rav claimed that the printer should have paid him since he benefited from the typesetting that the Rav had paid for. The Noda ben Yehuda sided with the Rav, reasoning that the printer's reuse of the typesetting the Rav had paid for caused the Rav to suffer a loss. The loss was that the Rav would sell fewer copies of his sefer since some of his potential customers would now opt for the Gemara that didn't have his commentary. For two reasons, this is a landmark ruling. First, in the case where we're discussing that were discussed by the Gemara, the one who benefited has to pay the owner of the object he benefited from. For example, the squatter pays the owner of the house. The owner of the animal pays the owner of the food. However, in this case, the printer was the owner of the type. The Rav had just paid the cost of typesetting, and he got what he paid for. He did not own the type. It was the printer's property, and the printer could have dismantled the type. This objection was raised by both the Baruch Ta'am and Yeshuat Malcolm, who disagrees with the ruling of the Noda ben Yehuda. However, we will see that many later poskim followed the Noda ben Yehuda's ruling. I have to agree with him. He paid for the typesetting, so basically he owned the typesetting, even though he didn't actually own the type. And the printer actually used what he was paid for to make something that was going to cause him a loss. And your opinion is?
The typesetter is wrong.
Yeah. Okay, so the second novelty concerns the Noda ben Yehuda's extension of the concept of what constitutes a loss. In the case discussed in the Gemara, there was an actual out-of-pocket loss. Perhaps it was small, but there was a real loss. In the Noda ben Yehuda's case, the loss was only the loss of potential profits. However, the Amodei Ish ruled exactly like the Noda ben Yehuda in the situation, which is almost identical to yours. One person took an elaborate course to learn the entire painting profession, including manufacturing the paint. And he took detailed notes which enabled him to work as a painter. Another person, without his permission, came and copied his notes and used them to learn the painting trade and compete with the first painter. The Amodei Ish ruled that the second painter had to pay the first painter because he gained by using the first painter's notes, while causing a loss to the first painter because he took away potential customers. Another authority who ruled like the Noda ben Yehuda is the Devarim Malkeil. The plaintiff in the dispute was brought to him was a person who developed a product and obtained approval from the Polish Health Ministry. Here we go. We're right back to Europe again.
Yep.
In the market, actually back in the communist Europe. The Polish ministry to market his product, all of which entailed an outlay of money. The defendant had copied the first person's product and marketed it using the identical stickers as the first person's, indicating that the property had the approval of the health ministry. The Devarim Malkeil ruled that the defendant had to pay the plaintiff because he profited from the plaintiff's outlay in a manner that caused the plaintiff to lose potential customers as well as other potential losses if he had gotten busted.
But he copied exactly.
Pardon?
He copied it exactly.
Exactly, yeah. He also ruled that the plaintiff had the right to force the defendant to cease marketing the product. So, I mean, it's similar, but not exactly.
Exactly. So what do people do in the United States and Canada and the world when they produce an item?
What do they do? They either patent it or they register it as a trademark.
Exactly. They go to a lawyer and they take out a trademark, and it's because of that protection. Because manufacturing an item that is closely related, but it's not the same, is controversial. This is why you have so many copycats for clothing, for purses, for shoes. And the person who manufactures it, the person who's the original maker, is really the loser.
Right. I mean, my company is actually involved in a case like that right now. Somebody has used our trademark name and just modified it slightly, and is actually taking customers away from us. So
that is wrong.
That is wrong. Yeah. There is as you go across the bridge in the Blue Water Bridge into Sarnia, Canada. For those of you who don't know, because I used to go over there and I used to help Rabbi Man on the high holy days. And I would go over there. And it always astounded me that when you went to get to the shul, when you went down this one road, there was a bar on the road, which was called Moe's Tavern. And it had a picture of Moe from The Simpsons on the sign. And it just astounded me how they got away with that. Because I mean, it was blatant copyright infringement, and it's just.
The Chinese are famous for this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they have the corner market. It's a multi-billion-dollar market for these offshoots. And to me, whatever is made in China, whoever hears me, whatever is made in China to me is garbage. I'm sorry. It's garbage.
It's stolen.
This is why I always believe that the United States should make their own products, not to buy from China.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, just about everything that China comes out with is stolen technology. They 100%.
100%. And the strange thing about it is, depending who the ruling party is in the United States, they get away with it. And they know it, and China knows it, and that's why they do it. It's unfortunate, but true,
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing is, and we learned this a long time ago. Now, some of you know I actually worked in the steel industry for a number of years. Well, actually, 13, 14, 15 years. And this was during the time back in the 80s when we started seeing a lot of manufacturing going out of the country. It was going to Mexico, and primarily it was going to China, especially steel. The Chinese absolutely devastated the steel industry here in the United States. And what they found out, big companies, General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, whoever, found out that they thought they were getting a deal because they were actually buying the steel cheaper from China. And because I worked in quality control and I had to test this stuff when it came in, the problem was we had a 60% fallout rate, which meant that 60% of the product that we were getting in was absolutely no good. And you couldn't send it back to them because it was too expensive to send it back. So the big makers, the big OEMs ended up having to eat that cost. And what they found out in the long run was it was costing them 50% more to buy it from China because they had to keep buying more of it because of the fallout rate. If they had just been buying it from the steel mills in the United States, U.S. Steel, Bethlehem, and so on and so forth, while they thought they were paying a high price for it, their fallout rate was less than 1%. So
here's a bigger question. Everybody's familiar with the Titanic. The Titanic hit the ice. Why did the Titanic break so fast? That's just that the steel was pretty thick. And, ships are built to last. Why did it break? Why was it so... The steel was from China.
Wow.
And they analyzed it, and it was so flawless that, a hammer would break the steel.
Well, that's the
Everything
problem.
that's
See, back in 1912, when the Titanic was actually sailing, it was actually under construction for like 2 years before that. But the steel making at that point was not that sophisticated. They did not know about things like hydrogen embrittlement. They didn't know about degaussing steel and stuff like that. So what the steel that they were making in there was almost like wrought iron.
It was brittle.
Yeah, wrought iron is very brittle. I mean, it looks very pretty, and you can work with it if you heat it and you know what you're doing. But once it's heated and cooled and tempered and all that other stuff, it gets very brittle. And
do you know what they found in Canada? They were importing rice from China, and they analyzed the rice. They found out some of the rice was made out of plastic.
Yeah.
It looked like rice, but it was plastic. People were eating plastic.
Well, we had the case a number of years ago where we were buying drywall from China. Come to find out, the drywall was radioactive.
I'm the prime example because in Port St. Lucie, when I tried to sell my house before I moved to the Dominican Republic, thank God that the gyprock was from the United States. But a lot of the homes in Port St. Lucie were made out of stuff made from China, and it had asbestos. If the house that I was in would have been made out of asbestos, I wouldn't be in Dominican, and I would be on the street because I would be broke.
Yeah, I mean that was
God's truth.
But to get back to the Titanic thing, is that because the steel making wasn't that sophisticated. Now you have fairly brittle steel, and then you put it into extremely cold water, and it breaks like glass. I mean, that's why the Titanic went down so fast. Well, because not only because of that, because of the huge scar and the having split 12, I think it was, of the watertight compartments. It was a series of errors. But I mean, there was the Carpathian was built the same way. So was the Olympic. They were both built exactly the same way, and they sailed for a very long time. It just
They never had any problems because
well, they were paying attention to what was going on. I mean, and that's the other thing too. I mean, the weather and everything. I mean, there's so many documentaries out there on this stuff. I don't need to repeat it all, but it was there was a series of errors, and it was there was weather and everything else had to play into it and everything. So anyway, so let's get back here to finally get back to where we were. Okay, so this is the product basically he was making the product, the exact same product as the other person, except it was a knockoff. It was made to look exactly like the other person's product, and the Devrei Malkel ruled that he had to cease making it. Okay, so this is also the ruling of the Birkat Shlomo. His ruling, which is after World War II, was really a further extension of the previous ruling because in his case, the plaintiff, who was the owner of the rights to print the Vilna Shas, no longer printed the Shas at all since the Nazis, may they be destroyed and forgotten, had destroyed his press. Thus, he did not lose customers from the defendant's reprinting of the sale of the Vilna Shas. His loss was by printing the Shas without paying for the right to print the Shas. The defendant prevented the plaintiff from selling the rights to print the Shas to another publisher who would have otherwise paid for the rights. Do you know who actually published the first set of the Talmud after World War II in Germany?
no,
Did you say no?
no.
Oh, the United States military.
Oh, I apologize. I did read. I read it the other day. You're right.
Yeah,
But I didn't know.
Yeah, the U.S. military actually printed in Germany the Talmud after World War II. I actually have a Siddur that was printed in Berlin, of all places, printed in Berlin in 1936, which was the year that the Nuremberg laws went into effect, which restricted, no printing of Jewish texts or anything like that, which is probably what happened here. It may well be the last run of the Siddur until after the war. So anyway, getting my Siddur is a prayer book, Lee. Okay, so Rav Zalman Nehemiah Goldberg discussed the same issue in the context of copying tapes. I think back in the 1970s and 1980s, we all probably did that. He claimed that the extension of the Noda B'Yehuda to the case where the printer derived benefit from his own letters is actually a dispute among the Rishonim and the Achronim. He writes that according to the Noda B'Yehuda, one who copies and sells tapes owes money to the one who made the original tape. And I think what we're talking about here is that, this is somebody who is copying a tape and selling it, not somebody who is copying it for their own use. We should note that your practice of taking pictures and not even buying the product that you copy is even worse, since you are deriving benefit from the store owner who owns the clothing, and you are damaging him as well, since he loses customers too. Therefore,
ask you,
pardon?
how many of us have copy tapes or discs all our lives?
Well, that's okay. Let me put this. Sorry. If you buy a tape or a disc, okay, you have the right to make a copy of that for yourself.
For your own purpose.
For your own purpose. And that's basically it's for archival purposes. Basically, if I buy a movie and I don't want to destroy the movie, so I make a copy of it so that I can watch it whenever I want, but I want to save it. I have several movies like that, actually.
Question.
Because they're either very obscure or the copies that I have are signed and stuff like that. So I make a copy of it. That way I can watch it as much as I want, and I don't damage the original. That is legal. That is absolutely legal.
Question.
Yes.
Can I borrow it from you and watch it? Not
Actually,
copy it.
yes. Actually, under copyright law, yes, I can loan it to you, and as long as you're not showing it publicly and you're not making money from it, then you can watch it and return it.
Okay. Can I copy it?
You cannot copy it.
For my own purpose.
For your own purpose, copying it would be a violation of copyright law, and we saw that with the what was the music sharing site that Napster? Remember Napster?
Yep.
And how much trouble they got into, and ended up going out of business because they were basically making copies and selling basically they were just putting copies of music up on a site and letting people download it, and by joining them and paying a small fee and downloading it, and the original artist was not making any money from it.
That is true.
Yeah, so
I can watch, but not copy.
right. And you can't show it publicly to make money from it. Okay. So, let's see. Where did I leave off? Okay. So, okay.
No comments from the gallery?
Oh, there's a lot of comments going on in there.
Let's hear it.
Let's see. Okay, let's go. I'm going to have to scroll back quite a ways because there is a lot of commenting going on here.
It's a good subject.
Okay, let's see. A lot of copyright. Okay, so my computer's really. Lee says, I think hearing more about life under communism would be healthy for all.
I would love to.
Donald says, I agree. Lee, Rabbi, please ask Ancel to teach us about communism as he saw and lived it. Thanks. Marilyn says, heard of books. There are lots of books on the subject. But there's nothing like hearing that first-person account. Simcha has joined us. Sorry I didn't see you sooner, Simcha.
Let me tell you, Marilyn, you can read 1,000 books. Living communism for one day will make up for all those books because you have no idea the pain. I am very surprised. I was a Navy pilot. When we used to come back from a mission, we used to have a psychiatrist that used to talk to us, and they used to say, we are going to take you out of that killing mode because you kill. So one day coming back, I was tired, and I said to the psychiatrist, sir, Is there a piece of paper on my forehead that says that I am stupid? He says, no, no, you're not. Because if you were stupid, you wouldn't be sitting in front of me as a pilot. But you are the luckiest, these are the words, they're not mine. It says, you are the luckiest bastard in the world. And I said, huh? He says, sir, I just killed. He says, yes, but you've never seen the face you kill. You're at 10, 15,000 feet, you just dropped the bomb and you're on your way. But that poor soldier on the ground that has to point a gun, that's the one who comes back with PTSD. That is the same thing as communism. You can read all about it, but when you see it with your own eyes, when you feel it with your own body, when you feel the pain, you will know exactly what communism is. There's such a big misconception. And this is the whole thing that's going on in the United States, especially some of these ladies that are in the government that say that communism, and then we have a Jew, that is a communist. I just don't understand him. And I understand why he is saying it, because he's never lived it. He's never worked a day in his life, and that's what hurts me.
Yeah.
Because if he had to live 1 week in a communist country, he would either commit suicide or he would just die himself.
Well, Solzhenitsyn actually said that, the whole concept of the useful idiot, which came from his book, The Gulag Archipelago. It was either the Gulag Archipelago or the First Circle. I can't remember which one. Anyway, but he talked about the concept of the useful idiot. Well, once the useful idiot is no longer useful to the communist, then he becomes a threat to the communist. And therefore,
there is no criminal law in communism. There is no criminal law. There is no criminal lawyer. You commit a crime, you go in front of 3 judges, and they have a thick book, and they will say, what did you do? So he says, well, I stole $300. So they will go to the book, and they will open up the book, and it says $300, 6 months in jail. There is no trial. You just go, oh, sir, you committed crime, you killed somebody? Okay, so they talk between the 3 judges. Okay, when is free time? Next Tuesday at 10 o'clock, you will be executed. That's it. You can scream, you can beg. There's no lawyer to protect you. There's no criminal law. There's no criminal lawyers.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is for divorces. There is criminal law. 3 judges tell you exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be either jail or the bullet. Nothing else.
Yeah, and that's what usually happens. That's what usually happens to the useful idiots who promote it and go out and protest for it and all this other stuff. Once it actually comes in, they become a threat to the powers that be, and they usually end up as in the gulags, or as my Russian friend used to say, people under the snow.
Have you ever heard anybody in Moscow to break into a department store and steal?
Oh, no.
It's like committing suicide.
Oh, I mean, their police are completely different than what we see here. These guys take no prisoners.
Yeah. You know what the biggest human problem in Russia is?
What's
Alcoholism.
that? Oh, yeah.
Because a lot of people have no jobs. You are allowed to make your own alcohol. You can make 100 gallons of alcohol and drink yourself to death. Mm-hmm. There's no problem. There's no law against making alcohol or beer or wine, because most of the people have no job. What you read in the paper, Putin is the richest person in the world. He doesn't even know how much money he has. He owns Russia. You go ahead and say something against Putin, you will live exactly 5 minutes, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. You go to China. I've been to China. You go to China. Every street, every 10 feet, there's a camera. You cannot do anything. You do something, you're a goner. You have no idea how many people they execute for nothing. They will execute generals because of the general's too old, or if he just got drunk and he said something against whatever the president of or the premier of China.
Oh, yeah.
He's gone. They'll shoot him without any question. To them, human beings are nothing. What do you think this pandemic is? China wanted to lose 400 million people because they can't feed them. And everybody says, oh, China's the richest country in the world. That's a load of malarkey.
Yeah, it's a paper tiger.
And I am in Facebook jail, by the way, is because I protected animals. I said that anybody that hurts an animal should get the maximum penalty, and they gave me 30 days in jail. Not that I care. But in China, they eat thousands of dogs because they don't have food.
Well, I mean, look at Venezuela.
Most people are so closed in, not because they're stupid. God forbid, I would never say that. Most people have no idea what communism stands for.
Yeah, I mean, look at Venezuela. I mean, they have one of the top economic powers in the world.
They have the most oil in the world. Listen, when that godforsaken Chavez, I hope he's burning in hell. When you know that every person that becomes president or a premier of a country, he has to disclose anywhere, even in South Africa, they have to disclose how much money they earn. He had his wealth when he became president of Venezuela. He had value of $25,000. When he died, he had $4 billion. From where?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the zoos in Venezuela are empty.
Yep.
Because they had to kill him for meat.
They got Yasser Arafat.
There's no stray cats. There's no stray dogs in Venezuela. They're gone.
Yeah. Yasser Arafat, who said he was the president of the Palestinians.
Yeah.
He never was even close to Palestine. He was born in Egypt.
Yeah.
When he died, he left $8 billion. The only person that owns the $8 billion is his daughter and his wife. They live in Paris. They own a street in England. They live the highest life, $8 billion. And the poor, well, there's no such thing Palestinian, they're Jordanians. The poor people, they starve to death.
Yeah, yeah.
People, it is unfortunate that we as a society and we as human beings have been told and have been taught to read the papers. To me, CNN, MSNBC, and the rest of them are pure and out liars. They're all about money because news makes money. You ever read, good news doesn't sell. Bad news sells by the millions.
Well, that's the old line that they use. If it bleeds, it leads.
Most people haven't got a clue, and you're right, Marilyn. I will speak, but it's going to take a few shows. Most people have no idea. The 14 years that I lived under communist rule, I mean, I am surprised that my parents and me and my brother, that we survived it. We survived. It was, I'm just telling you, if we didn't have a small little house with a little bit of a garden to grow potatoes and some corn and have a few.
Nope, I think we lost. Oh, there you are. You're back.
We would have
Okay.
starved to death. We as kids, we went sometimes 2 and 3 days without food. And that is the truth. That's why I hate to waste food.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I went off.
No. People seem to be enjoying what you're hearing about this. Well, maybe not enjoying, but getting an education on it. Okay, so we're going to stop here because our time's just about up. We'll finish up with this next week, and then we'll go on to another subject. Maybe we'll talk more about communism, socialism, what's going on in the world in the United States. if you'll hang on, Rabbi Ancel, I will sign out here, and I will get back with you.
I'm sorry if I apologize if I sounded angry. I'm not angry. It's just a frustration just to remember, because I don't know. It brings back such pain and memories that I don't understand, and somebody would have to teach me and tell me how can they even think. And that Bernie Sanders, I hope he burns in hell when he goes. I'm sorry. As a rabbi, I shouldn't say that, but I hope he burns in hell for trying to teach people that communism is the best way to go. My God, why doesn't he tell the truth?
Well, because he doesn't know what the truth is.
But he has 3 homes that are worth millions.
Yeah.
So.
He drives a super sports car. I mean,
I just don't get it. How I don't understand. Somebody has to tell me. There's got to be somebody in the chat room. Somebody has to tell me in the United States, how can they be so easily bamboozled by some of these people?
Yeah. Okay, listen. I'm going to turn you down here.
Okay.
And stay there. I'll be back. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. Yeah, we didn't make it through to the decision. We will get to the decision next week. But again, like I said, this is our show. We get to discuss whatever we want. So, if we get a little sidetracked, there you go. Okay. So don't forget, tomorrow night is the in-depth Torah study with yours truly, and which is 8 p.m. Eastern, and then 8 p.m. Friday is Kabbalat and Ma'ariv Shabbat service, and 10 a.m. Eastern on Shabbat is Shacharit and Musaf, and then right back here Monday, God willing, for Zeta Story Corner. Naftali, the storyteller, and his horse Sus, which is an absolutely delightful story. I think you will love it. Don't miss that story. And then right back here next Tuesday for the Rabbis Discuss, and we'll discuss whatever it is that we're going to discuss. Okay, so until then, everybody, thank you for being here, and we'll simply say, Laila Tov.